The Stone Carver, a Zen parable for staying grounded and calm. You are lying awake in the dark with a burning chest and a restless mind, replaying a bitter conversation, desperately wanting to correct someone's false opinion of your character. And feeling clean inner peace is completely impossible while another person misjudges your intentions. Perhaps someone at work, a family member or a friend, spoke an unfair word that cut you to the bone, and now your mind is spinning, mentally drafting sharp arguments and rehearsing defenses to prove that you are good, honest, and worthy of respect. The room around you is dim, cool, and quiet. The faint, earthy aroma of dried lavender leaves or cool terracotta tiles rests softly beside your bed, and the steady weight of the floor beneath your frame holds you firmly, offering a quiet, physical grounding that does not ask you to defend your honor tonight. Dear friend, this intense, exhausting urge to fix what others think of you does not mean your spirit is fractured, nor does it mean you are condemned to live at the mercy of every passing rumor. It is simply the heavy fatigue of an artist who has spent the entire day trying to catch every floating speck of dust before it touches a stone surface, believing that a single grain of dirt ruins the beauty underneath. You do not have to rewrite anyone's opinion of you before morning arrives. Nor do you need to convince the world of your purity to earn your rest tonight. Your true integrity is not a fragile drawing written in dry chalk that can be wiped away by a harsh comment, and nothing in this quiet space requires you to polish your reputation in the dark. Tonight, you are invited to let your tight shoulders sink into the mattress, allowing your deep, unvarnished character to rest unbothered like a heavy sandstone stele anchored in the earth. A surprising, profound paradox lives at the heart of Buddhist wisdom. When we look at our agony over other people's opinions, we often believe that true peace comes from polishing our image until everyone approves of us, ensuring that no one holds a negative thought about our name. Yet ancient wisdom reminds us that trying to control the thoughts inside another person's head is like standing in a windy canyon and trying to dictate which direction the dust particles fly. The opinions of others are merely windborne dust, generated entirely by the atmospheric conditions, biases, and weather of their own minds. Real inner freedom does not come from clearing the sky of all dust. True peace arrives when you realize that your true self is like a deeply carved sandstone monument, whose etched inscription remains perfectly deep and true, regardless of how many stray grains of sand blow across its face. The mind mistakenly insists that if someone holds a bad opinion of you, your internal value has been damaged. It treats every misunderstanding as an emergency, convincing you that you must over-explain, defend, and correct every false perception to restore your peace. But a heavy sandstone stele standing in a quiet courtyard does not run after the wind to collect the dust that touched its surface. The carved characters etched into the stone do not fade simply because a passing traveler misreads the inscription. The stone remains grounded, dense, and motionless, letting the wind carry its sand wherever it pleases, knowing that no floating speck of dust can alter the rock underneath. Think of how much vital life force you have burned by trying to manage the thoughts of people around you. You have felt your heart race in the middle of the night as you drafted explanations that were never asked for. You have lay awake with a tight throat and locked jaw, replaying an unfair judgment, feeling an agonizing need to prove your goodness to someone who was determined to misunderstand you. Fighting this obsession with approval by scolding yourself for caring only adds more dust to the air. What if, for these quiet hours, we stop trying to clean the wind? What if we permit your heart to sit as an unbothered stone monument, completely unmoved by the opinions floating through the dark? Let the small, defensive muscles behind your eyes soften completely, releasing the rigid grip in your jaw and collarbones. Feel the broad, steady support beneath your spine, taking the full, heavy load of your bones without asking you to defend your name. Listen to the long, quiet cadence of your breath moving through your chest, easy and unhurried in the darkness. There is no need to regulate your breathing or force it into a special pattern. Let the air flow gently through your nostrils like a soft night breeze passing through a clay-walled courtyard, cool, smooth, and entirely free. Perhaps you learned early in life that approval was your only safety, building a habit of hypervigilant image control to shield your heart from rejection or harsh judgment. In the tradition of Zen practice, we do not view your need for approval as a flaw or a moral failing. It is seen as the natural distress of a stonemason who has forgotten the depth of his own carving, mistaking the floating dust for the stone itself. You do not need to win everyone's praise to be worthy of deep rest tonight. You need only to permit your spirit to settle into the broad, heavy density of your own quiet truth, so that whatever opinions blow past tomorrow can pass without tearing down your peace. In a short while, we will travel to an open quarry shed at the foot of a red sandstone cliff, where a young carver weeps over fine stone dust because passing travelers criticized his work. But right now, let your physical body yield to the simple, unconditional security of this quiet space. The walls around you are solid, keeping out the harsh judgments of the world. And the darkness here is not a hostile void, but a calm, neutral shelter that permits your tired heart to lay down its shield. You do not have to rewrite your story, win any arguments, or fix anyone's mind before dawn arrives. Your true value as a human being was never dictated by the fleeting thoughts of those around you. The human spirit was carved with deep, quiet integrity by life itself, built to stand firm through every storm of praise and blame. Let the tight band of tension across your forehead smooth out completely. Let your fingers uncurl slowly upon the bed, your hands soft and still like unused bronze tools resting on a carpenter's bench. There is no argument you must win in this dark room tonight, no reputation you must polish, and no fear strong enough to erase the deep inscription of your true character. You have reached the end of the day's struggle, and your heavy sandstone foundation is completely strong enough to hold you. As we move deeper into the quiet night ahead, remember that your true nature is like an ancient sandstone monument standing in a peaceful courtyard. It does not weaken when dry dust blows past its sides. The changing winds of human opinion can whittle through the trees, touch the stone face, and fade away into the dark, leaving your central carving deep clear and completely undisturbed in the quiet dark. Let the tired muscles around your temples melt into the darkness. Let your legs grow heavy and motionless upon the bed, your ankles and feet loose and completely supported by the mattress. There is no false judgment you must correct in this room tonight, no future opinion you must manage alone, and no criticism strong enough to shake the solid stone of your presence right now. You are resting within your own unvarnished truth, and your sandstone heart is completely broad enough for you to lay down your defense. At the base of a towering red cliff, where the desert wind swept fine yellow grit across the dry floor of an open quarry shed, a young stonemason named Shin worked under the fading light. The warm air smelled of wet slate dust, linseed oil, iron grit, and baked clay. For several months, Shin had been tasked with carving an inscription into a massive slab of coarse sandstone, destined for the town square. He held a bronze carving chisel in his left hand and a notched wooden mallet in his right, working carefully to etch each line deep into the rock face. Yet his heart was perpetually in turmoil, burned by an agonizing sensitivity to every passerby who stopped to inspect his progress. Travelers, merchant boys, and local laborers frequently strolled past the open shed on their way through the canyon. Whenever someone paused to look at the stone, Shin's body went completely rigid. A merchant would glance at the carving and comment that the letters looked too shallow. A passing farmer would frown and murmur that the spacing seemed uneven. A wealthy traveler would scoff, claiming that the style lacked elegance. Every single remark felt like a knife slipping between Shin's ribs. Instead of trusting his training, he spent his evenings frantically taking up his iron rasps and polishing stones, attempting to alter his work to satisfy the latest criticism. If a traveler said the lines were too faint, Shin drove his chisel deeper, sometimes chipping the delicate edges of the characters. If someone remarked that a corner looked too sharp, he ground the stone down until the original inscription lost its crisp, honest form. His fingers were raw, coated in fine pale powder, his jaw aching from grinding his teeth through the long afternoons. By attempting to reshape the inscription to match every passing opinion, the surface of the sandstone was becoming thin, scratched, and muddy. The original clarity of his lines was fading under a layer of frantic, defensive alterations. He lived in constant fear of the next spectator, convinced that if even one person found fault with the carving, his entire life was a humiliating failure. Sitting quietly on a low wooden stool in the shadow of the cliff was Master Ren, an elder stonecutter who had spent 60 years carving monuments throughout the province. Master Ren wore a faded coarse tunic, his arms lean and weathered like dried olive wood, his eyes calm and still. He was sitting beside a small earthenware bowl of cool well water, wiping the fine dust from his own tools with a piece of oiled rag, watching Shin's frantic adjustments without rushing to stop him. After a particularly harsh traveler paused, shook his head in disapproval, and walked away, Shin snapped. He dropped his bronze chisel onto the dirt floor, slammed his wooden mallet against the workbench, and buried his dust-covered face in his hands. Tears of anger and shame tracked through the dry powder on his cheeks. He shouted at the empty air, asking why people were so quick to judge what they did not understand. He told Master Ren that he could not bear the burden of being misunderstood any longer, declaring that it was impossible to find any peace or pride in his work, while every passing stranger threw dirt upon his name. Master Ren stood up slowly from his stool, his boots making a soft crunching sound on the gravel floor. He did not offer empty words of praise, nor did he lecture the young carver on pride. Instead, he reached down to the dusty floor and picked up the bronze carving chisel Shin had dropped. He held the tool lightly in his palm, feeling its balance, then walked over to the face of the sandstone steel. Master Ren dipped the tip of the bronze chisel into his bowl of cool well water, then drew a single clean vertical line directly into a fresh uncarved section of the sandstone. He applied a firm, steady pressure with his thumb, letting the dark metal channel deep into the rock grain, creating a clear, sharp groove that caught the dim evening light. Master Ren turned to the young carver and handed him a heavy straw fan. He asked Shin to stand beside the stone and wave the fan as hard as he could against the face of the carve. Shin looked confused, his breath still coming in shaky gasps, but he took the straw fan and began to wave it violently toward the rock. The powerful draft caught the dry, loose desert dust lying on the quarry floor, blowing a thick cloud of yellow grit straight across the face of the sandstone slab. Powder settled into the grooves, coating the rock surface in a dry, pale haze, obscuring the newly cut line under a fine layer of dirt. Master Ren stood calmly beside the dusty cloud. He asked Shin what had happened to the line he had just cut into the rock. He asked if the straw fan and the floating dust had destroyed the groove, or if the deep line had simply been covered by the fleeting weather of the room. Shin wiped his eyes with his sleeve and stepped closer to the stone. He blew a single, gentle puff of air from his lips against the carved groove. The loose powder scattered instantly into the air, falling away to the floor, revealing the dark, crisp line cut deep into the sandstone, perfectly intact, completely undamaged, unbothered by the dust that had rested upon it for a moment. Master Ren looked into Shin's exhausted, powder-stained face, his voice carrying the quiet, deep resonance of the canyon stone. He told the young carver that his agony did not come from the travelers who spoke as they walked past the shed. Their words were nothing more than the dust blown up by the straw fan, random particles carried by the fleeting currents of their own private moods. His true suffering was born from his willingness to drop his chisel every time a grain of sand touched his work, attempting to redraw his life to fit the wind. Master Ren rested his hand gently on the heavy top of the sandstone steel. He told Shin that a true carver cuts the line deep once, honoring the truth of his craft, and then lets the stone sit. The wind will blow yellow dust across the quarry every afternoon, and travelers will speak whatever thoughts float through their minds. But the deep carving does not belong to the wind. The stone does not apologize for its grain, nor does it chase after the dust to explain its shape. Shin stood motionless in the dimming light of the quarry shed, the cool desert breeze blowing through the open rafters. He looked down at the bronze chisel resting in his palm, feeling its cool, heavy metal against his calloused skin. A sudden, deep wave of emotional recognition washed through his chest, breaking through his defensive anger like a heavy hammer splitting a soft piece of shale. He saw clearly how many months he had wasted in total exhaustion, treating every casual judgment as an absolute truth, allowing passing strangers to dictate his internal peace. He recognized the profound lonely foolishness of his image control, seeing that trying to stop people from speaking was as impossible as trying to forbid the desert wind from carrying sand. Yet as the red cliff behind the shed turned dark purple in the twilight, and a cool night draft began to whistle through the quarry canyon, Shin felt a lingering tightness in his ribs. He understood the lesson of the carved stone, but he did not yet know how to stop his heart from flinching when the next wind blew across his face. This moment at the quarry edge does not demand that you become stone, nor does it ask you to grow cold and indifferent to the human world. Buddhist insight has never been about closing your heart to others or pretending that unkind words do not sting. It does not expect you to suppress your feelings, wear an unfeeling mask, or pretend that unfair criticism leaves no mark at all. Feeling a sudden pang of hurt when someone misjudges your character is a completely natural human experience. It is as natural as the fine yellow powder settling upon the red rock floor when the desert breeze picks up. Experiencing that swift flinch of pain when your goodness is questioned is simply proof that your heart is open and alive. When a harsh judgment or careless comment strikes your life, an instinctual desire to defend your dignity immediately awakens across your nervous system. That initial reaction carries its own honest reality, much like the sharp scent of wet slate dust after a fresh cut. Living among other human beings means that you will inevitably encounter moments where stranger minds throw shade upon your name. Feeling an immediate contraction, when your motives are twisted, is an unavoidable condition of sharing this earthly space with others. Yet look closely at what happens inside your chest long after the speaker has walked away and the room has gone quiet. This is where the heavy, exhausting agony of reputation control builds its silent trap. Driven by an old, instinctual fear of rejection or disgrace, our mind grabs hold of that passing remark and refuses to let it settle on the floor. We lie awake at midnight, fanning the dust back into our own faces, endlessly replaying the conversation, polishing our imaginary defenses, and insisting that we cannot rest until the other person changes their mind. We take a single fleeting moment of external judgment and turn it into a permanent storm that we carry around inside our own ribs. This desperate need to dictate how others perceive us is what ancient wisdom points to as the 8 worldly winds of praise and blame. In our ordinary daily lives, this internal pattern is not an abstract concept. It is that tight, burning knot in your chest that demands you write another message to explain yourself. It is the exhausting belief that your inner worth changes every time a passing comment touches your ear. Consider what actually happens when you try to clean every floating speck of dust out of the sky. The comment spoken to you today was just a brief vibration of air, shaped by the mood, stress, and limitations of the person who said it. But by constantly trying to erase their perception, your mind transforms a passing breeze into an endless, agonizing war. The stranger's opinion is merely floating dust in the canyon. Your restless mind, your tight throat, and your bitter sleeplessness are the extra layers of pain created by your own refusal to let the dust pass by the rock. Genuine spiritual reflection shows us that most of the suffering you carry tonight does not come from the words that were spoken to you. It comes from the fierce, guarded story that you are only safe when everyone approves of your life. It comes from the exhausting habit of treating every opinion as an accurate mirror of your soul. External judgments are simply the natural, shifting weather of human minds. Those judgments carry no inherent power to alter the deep carving of your true character. But chasing after every particle of sand will always leave your hands raw and your spirit depleted. When we practice soft, spacious awareness, we are not giving up our self-respect, nor are we agreeing with a lie. Real inner freedom is simply the quiet, courageous decision to let the dust land where it falls without dropping your tools to fight it. It is the willingness to notice the familiar urge to defend your image and to whisper to yourself, "I do not need to rewrite my soul for a mind that does not understand me." When you allow your hands to unclamp from the polishing rasp, an immense, cool relief washes through your whole frame. This is the comforting reality of unvarnished integrity, made real in your muscles. True integrity means recognizing that your fundamental worth was cut deep into the rock of your being, long before anyone spoke a word about you. When you stop fighting the natural law of passing weather, those terrifying feelings of public shame lose their grip, dissolving into the quiet space of your present surroundings. The sandstone monument stands calm in the courtyard, not because the wind never blows, but because the rock does not depend on the weather to maintain its form. The desert breezes can blow yellow grit across its surface all day long, but when the gale subsides, the stone remains exactly what it was before the wind arrived. In the exact same way, when you stop trying to manage the thoughts of those around you, your inner life recovers a natural, effortless stability. The desperate need to win praise falls away, leaving a clear, grounded presence that knows how to stand firm through praise and blame alike. This grounded presence is your true, unshakable sanctuary. It was never created by public applause, nor was it diminished when someone spoke ill of your name. The quiet awareness inside you that notices the harsh judgment is completely untouched by the words. It remains spacious, still, and clear, like the high red cliffs holding the quarry shed against the night sky. Living your life with quiet dignity does not mean you must convince the world of your purity. Real peace is simply the willingness to be a deeply carved stone in an open courtyard, trusting that your true character is solid enough to outlast the wind. It is the quiet courage to say, the wind may blow its sand wherever it pleases, but the line in my heart remains deep, clear, and true. Slowly, a deep, cool understanding settles into your bones. You begin to see that dropping the obsession with other people's opinions is not an act of shameful surrender. It is the only way to protect the sacred clarity of your own soul. Surrendering the impossible job of controlling external minds is not a defeat. It is the quiet doorway to discovering the unbothered peace that was always waiting within your own unvarnished truth. As you lie here in the quiet sanctuary of your room, feeling the steady bed supporting your spine, you can feel how close this unbothered peace really is. It does not require you to win every argument, nor does it demand that everyone see your goodness before dawn. It requires only a single moment of soft permission, a gentle loosening of the tight grip in your chest, allowing your presence to sit like a heavy sandstone monument in the present moment without asking the wind to stop blowing. In a short while, we will practice a very simple way of sensing this solid stone presence within your own physical body. But even right now, as you listen to these soft words, notice how the air enters and leaves your chest without demanding any public defense. Your breath moves quietly through the dark, supported by the quiet atmosphere of the room. Steady, deep, and completely whole, exactly as it is. Now, if it feels comfortable for your frame in this moment, allow your physical form to settle softly into the bed. There is no rigid alignment you must force, and no strict posture you need to maintain upon the mattress. You might let your arms lie loosely by your sides, or allow your hands to rest gently over your lower stomach, wherever your shoulders feel most unburdened. If your eyes are still open, perhaps you can let your eyelids drift shut, inviting the dim, cool dark of the room to shelter your sight. Nothing in this space is asking you to defend your honor, and no harsh judgment requires your attention tonight. Take a slow, quiet breath in through your nose, letting the cool air expand your chest, and then let it slip out softly through your mouth, allowing your body to sink into the bed like a heavy sandstone slab, settling onto solid earth. You do not need to count your inhalations or regulate their depth. Simply allow your lungs to draw air the way an ancient courtyard breathes under a midnight sky, steady, natural, and completely unhurried. With every quiet exhale, perhaps you can feel a subtle loosening in the tight muscles around your temples, your throat, and the delicate center of your chest. If a heavy ache of self-defense remains in your body, that is completely fine as well. You do not need to fight that tension or force it to vanish. Even noticing that old impulse to polish your image without judging yourself is a moment of deep, gentle restoration. As you lie here in the dark, allow your attention to turn softly toward one specific comment, unfair judgment, or misunderstanding that made you feel utterly exposed today. It might be a harsh word spoken by someone at work, a cold glance from a family member, or a rumor you desperately wanted to disprove. Do not try to solve that conflict right now, and do not attempt to construct an argument before morning comes. Simply let that tense, defensive story sit quietly in the warm light of your awareness. like a handful of dry desert sand held in an open palm. Perhaps you can give a very soft, silent name to what your mind is doing. You might whisper to yourself, "This is the habit of chasing after the windborne dust." Or perhaps, "This is my spirit trying to clean every floating speck of sand out of the sky." By naming this internal pattern with a gentle, forgiving voice, you step back from the edge of the emotional storm. You begin to observe the urge to control opinions without letting it strain your heart. Now, if it feels right, bring to your mind's eye the image of that massive sandstone stele resting in Master Ren's open quarry shed. See its cool, rough grain, its heavy base anchored deep in the red gravel, and the clean, sharp inscription cut deep into its face. Picture your own true character as that central stone monument, completely still, heavy and anchored in the cool earth, indifferent to the shifting drafts in the air. Imagine taking that bitter judgment or false opinion you carried today and placing it as a light dusting of yellow powder upon the face of the stone. You do not need to wipe the powder away, nor do you need to pick up a tool to alter the carving underneath. You simply permit the dry sand to sit briefly on the surface of the rock, trusting the deep, carved lines to hold their shape without any help from your hands. Watch what happens in your imagination when you let the dust rest upon the stone without fighting it. Picture a gentle night breeze sweeping through the open canyon. The cool air glides softly over the sandstone slab, lifting the fine particles of powder into the dark sky, carrying them harmlessly away into the vast desert night, where they dissolve into nothingness. Notice how the sandstone monument remains completely unchanged as the dust drifts away. The carved characters etched into its face stay dark, crisp, and perfectly deep, holding their form through the passage of the breeze. The stone does not chase the floating powder, nor does it strain to prove its density. It simply rests in its ancient, unbothered presence, heavy, quiet, and completely secure in the dark. If your mind strays back into its old habit of drafting arguments or feeling panicked about what someone thinks of you, there is no need to feel frustrated with yourself. Your mind has been trying to protect your dignity through image control for a very long time. And old defensive habits do not vanish in a single hour. Whenever you catch yourself trying to clean the air again, simply notice that movement with a soft, compassionate heart. You can quietly say to yourself, "My mind is trying to stop the desert wind again." And then imagine letting the dust float past the face of the stone. You can return to this quiet, unbothered monument whenever you are ready, as many times as you need tonight. There is no argument you must win before you are permitted to fall asleep. You do not need to convince anyone of your goodness, nor do you need to demonstrate that your reputation is spotless before morning comes. Healing your relationship with approval is not a sudden, dramatic event where you never care about words again. It is a series of quiet, hidden moments where you choose to let the sand land on the rock and allow the wind to carry it away. Even a single breath spent trusting the deep carving of your heart permits your nervous system to taste the profound safety that lives beyond praise and blame. Feel the easy, natural movement of your chest continuing its silent work in the dark. Cool air fills your lungs, lifting your ribs slightly, and flows out with a long, soft fall. The solid weight of your head, your shoulders, and your legs is completely supported by the mattress beneath you. You do not need to defend your name tonight. You do not need to prove to anyone that you are honest or worthy of love. The bed is holding you, the room is enclosing you, and your true character is deep enough to stand firm without asking the world for permission. In a short while, we will travel further into a quiet, clay-walled temple courtyard during a breezy autumn evening, where an old sweeper demonstrates how a straw broom clears the path without fighting the wind. But for now, allow yourself to remain right here in your bed. Let the carved sandstone stele rest quietly in its deep foundation. Let your hands remain soft and still upon the sheets, knowing that nothing needs to be proven, nothing needs to be defended, and that your deep, unvarnished truth is completely safe enough to hold your rest. Farther up the mountain road, within a quiet inner courtyard enclosed by high walls of baked red clay, lived a young temple attendant named Yori. The autumn evening air smelled of dry straw, wood ash, baked earth, and fallen plum leaves. Yori was responsible for maintaining the serene grounds, a task he approached with frantic, obsessive precision. In the center of the courtyard stood several ancient sandstone steels, their carved faces bearing sacred lineage records. Yori lived in a state of quiet, agonizing vulnerability, believing that his worth as an attendant was directly measured by keeping those stone faces completely pristine. Every gust of wind that blew over the clay walls brought dry yellow sand from the surrounding hills. Whenever a few grains settled into the carved grooves of the monuments, Yori felt an immediate, sharp panic in his stomach. He carried a wide whisk broom made of stiff rice straw, sweeping the stone faces 40 times a day. He chased after every falling leaf, every speck of airborne grit, and every floating seed, treating the natural movement of the air as a personal insult to his devotion. When monks or visitors walked past and commented on the dusty wind, Yori felt a wave of cold shame, convinced that their casual words were hidden accusations that he was failing his duty. His arms were stiff from constant sweeping, his palms calloused and raw from gripping the hard straw handle. He stayed awake long into the chilly nights, standing in the courtyard with a small lantern, obsessively dusting the stone faces by candlelight. By refusing to let a single grain of sand touch the rock, he was driving his body toward total nervous collapse. He had turned a simple act of stewardship into a desperate, endless war against the sky, terrified that if the steels looked neglected for even 1 hour, he would be judged as lazy, unworthy, and unfit for the temple grounds. Living in a small corner room near the kitchen was Sister Maya, an elder stone conservator who had lived within the clay walls for over 50 years. Sister Maya wore a plain gray robe, her silver hair tucked under a dark cap, her face lined like smooth river granite. She spent her days repairing ancient masonry with lime mortar, moving with an unhurried, quiet grace that seemed completely untouched by the changing weather. One breezy evening, a sudden autumn gale whistled over the clay walls, sending a thick cloud of yellow dust and dry plum leaves swirling across the courtyard. The wind coated every sandstone stele in a pale, grainy film within seconds. Yori gasped in horror, grabbing his rice straw broom, and began sweeping the nearest stone face with frantic, violent swings. His breath came in ragged gasps, his chest burning, his shoulders locked in a rigid hunch. The harder he swept, the more the wind blew fresh dust right back into his eyes and onto the freshly brushed stone. He began to weep in sheer exhaustion, shouting at the wind, cursing the dry hills, feeling completely defeated by a universe that refused to stay clean. Sister Maya walked slowly out from the workshop shelter, carrying a small clay cup of warm barley water. She stood a few feet away, watching Yori's desperate battle without judgment or scolding. She watched him strike the stone with his broom until a few straw bristles snapped and fell into the dirt. Sister Maya stepped forward and laid her hand gently on the handle of Yori's broom, stopping his frantic swinging. She did not take the tool away from him. She simply held the straw handle still, anchoring it against the wind. Sister Maya pointed to the carved face of the central sandstone stele standing before them. She asked Yori to step back and look at the monument itself, rather than focusing on the floating dust landing on its surface. She asked him if the stone had grown smaller, weaker, or less sacred, because the autumn wind had deposited a layer of sand into its grooves. She asked him why he treated every grain of windborne dust as a permanent stain upon his own soul. Yori stood shaking in the cold breeze, clutching his broom, his throat tight with unspoken defense. He admitted that he was terrified of what the elder monks would think of him if they saw the dust. He admitted that he felt completely worthless whenever the wind spoiled his work, believing that a dusty stone meant he was failing to protect the sanctuary. Sister Maya picked up a fallen rice straw bristle from the dirt floor and held it up between her fingers. She explained that his mind was acting like a single bristle trying to stop a mountain gale. She told him that the courtyard was built of clay and stone, precisely because the hills were made of wind and sand. The weather belonged to the sky, but his peace belonged to his own heart. Sister Maya then took her own broom, which rested by the doorway, and began to sweep the courtyard floor with a long, slow, rhythmic cadence. She did not sweep toward the stone, nor did she fight the gusts. She simply swept the heavy gravel in a smooth, continuous curve, letting the wind carry the lighter dust right over her head without attempting to catch a single particle in midair. Yori watched her move. He saw that she was not ignoring the courtyard. Nor was she being lazy. She was simply sweeping in harmony with the atmosphere, allowing the dust to pass through the space without treating the wind as an enemy. A quiet, subtle realization began to blossom inside Yora's tight chest. He saw that his suffering was not caused by the autumn wind, but by his own stubborn demand that the world remain completely static and clean to preserve his fragile self-image. He recognized that his frantic sweeping was not an act of love for the steels, but a desperate shield against his own fear of judgment. Yori did not instantly become a perfect master of detachment, nor did his anxiety about disapproval vanish into the night air. But he chose one small, profound shift in his behavior. He lowered his rice straw broom until its bristles rested flat on the earth. He took a long, deep breath of the dusty, leaf-scented evening air, letting his tense shoulders drop 3 inches. Instead of sweeping the central steel for the 41st time that night, Yori leaned his broom quietly against the clay wall, sat down on the cool stone step beside Sister Maya, and simply watched the wind blow the yellow sand across the courtyard, allowing the dust to rest on the stone while he drank his warm tea in peace. The quiet picture of Yori sitting on the stone step beside Sister Maya reveals a profound truth about how our nervous systems manufacture our internal exhaustion. So much of our Latinite emotional torment stems from a subtle, deeply ingrained belief that our safety depends on controlling what passes through another person's mind. We take on an impossible responsibility for the opinions, moods, and judgments of those around us, and we convince ourselves that if we just polish our image enough, we can somehow prevent the dry wind from ever carrying sand. This compulsion to manage external approval is often driven by an underlying panic toward uncertainty and vulnerability. When someone misjudges our character or speaks a harsh word, our mind feels utterly terrified of losing its standing, its safety, or its place in the world. To soothe that terrifying sense of helplessness, our internal surveillance jumps into high gear. We construct elaborate mental defenses, replay old conversations, and rehearse future explanations, attempting to build a protective wall around our reputation. We convince ourselves that if we stay hypervigilant through the dark, we can force everyone to view us with complete understanding and praise. Yet this habit of chasing after every opinion is a form of resistance that turns original care into chronic suffering. When you refuse to let another person hold their own perspective, you are secretly operating under the illusion that you are the sole master of the entire sky. You begin to define your own worth through your ability to please everyone, turning your defensive panic into a permanent identity. You stop viewing yourself as a deeply carved monument anchored in true integrity, and begin seeing yourself as an exhausted sweeper whose only purpose is to catch every floating grain of sand before it touches the floor. Buddhist wisdom offers a gentle, illuminating lantern that exposes this exact trap without asking you to become cold or unfeeling. It asks us to look closely at the vital difference between the natural friction life brings and the heavy, secondary misery our own minds create through resistance and image control. Moving through a world populated by millions of shifting perspectives means that you will naturally encounter moments where someone misconstrues your motives or speaks out of their own private weather. That initial sting of being misunderstood is an unavoidable condition of living among human beings. However, the agonizing, sleepless exhaustion that keeps your throat tight at midnight is not the other person's thought. It is the extra weight generated by your own decision to run after every windborne particle, clutching your straw broom against the sky, trying to scrub the air clean with your bare hands. It is like an engraver who sets a finished sandstone monument in an open courtyard, and upon seeing a light dusting of yellow pollen float down from the mountain pine trees, decides to spend the rest of his life standing over the slab with a wet cloth, rubbing the rock so violently that his fingers bleed, wearing away the deep, beautiful characters he originally carved, all because he cannot bear the thought of a single yellow speck resting on the stone for an hour. The floating pine pollen in the air is the primary reality of the mountain spring. The worn, ruined carving and bleeding fingers are the secondary suffering created entirely by his insistence that the forest stop shedding its dust. Peace does not arrive when you somehow convince every person in the valley to speak only glowing praise of your name. True liberation begins the very second you lay the cloth down on the stone step, sit back against the clay wall, and watch the yellow pollen float past in the wind. The forest will continue to shed its dust as it must. You can offer a clear, honest life and keep a quiet integrity, but using your own flesh as a barrier against human judgment does not make the wind any quieter. Consider how much of your daily depletion comes from attempting to bear burdens that belong entirely to another soul's internal weather. We freeze in Latinite vigilance because we falsely believe that letting someone misunderstand us is an act of total defeat. But your true nature is not a delicate line written in loose sand that can be wiped out by a single breeze. Your awareness is like the deep, heavy sandstone block itself, broad, dense, and solid, holding its deep inscription without being eroded by the dust. When you surrender the impossible demand to control what others think, a massive weight lifts from your collarbones. The tight, defensive muscles around your jaw and shoulders, which have been locked for months to brace against the next criticism, can finally begin to soften. Your lungs find room to draw a complete, unburdened breath of cool night air. You begin to realize that remaining calm and anchored in your own truth, even while others hold a false view of your character, is not a failure of goodness. It is the highest form of self-respect you can offer to your own life. You are fully permitted to be an unbothered monument rather than a frantic sweeper in the storm. Your capacity to live a meaningful, honorable life was never dependent on securing universal approval. You do not need to prove the purity of your heart by running after every floating particle in the dark. You were created with a resilient, stable core, designed to stand firm upon the earth, capable of holding your deep inscription while leaving the windborne dust to float wherever it pleases. As you lie here in the dark, watching your breath move quietly through your ribs, notice when your mind attempts to pull you back into its old image control calculations. It might whisper that you are being careless, or that you must draft another defense before morning comes. Observe that thought with soft, unhurried presence. You do not need to fight the thought, nor do you need to obey its frantic demands. You can simply view it as a single speck of dry sand drifting past on the night breeze, carrying no power to alter the massive sandstone foundation resting beneath your bed. This wisdom of allowing the windborne dust to float past the carved rock without raising a straw broom in panicked defense belongs directly inside the noisy, anxious intersections of your modern routine. It finds its truest value during those small, restless moments when your mind starts leaping out into another person's perception to fix their opinion of you. Consider how easily this old pattern of image control unfolds on a completely ordinary evening. You lie in the dark, watching the pale glass screen of your phone illuminate the ceiling, waiting for a reply to a message you sent hours ago. Every minute that passes without a response feels like a cold draft blowing through your ribs. You grab the device, unlocking it to read your own words 4 times over, searching for a single phrase that might have sounded rude, needy, or foolish. You begin drafting 3 different follow-up messages in your head to smooth over an imaginary insult, convinced that if you do not clarify your intentions instantly, their cold silence will erase your worth. In that exact moment, when your thumbs hover over the glowing glass, you are treating your spirit as a fragile chalk sketch that a single delayed text can wipe away. The frantic voice in your head insists that polishing their view of you is the only way to feel safe tonight. But wisdom invites you to create one small, spacious pause before you tap the screen. You can feel the broad, motionless mattress beneath your back. You can acknowledge that uncomfortable wave of insecurity without obeying its command to sweep the courtyard in the dark. Setting the device face down on the nightstand, letting your hands rest open on the sheets, is how you step back from the wind. It is a quiet, radical choice to trust that the deep carving of your true character remains completely intact, whether another person replies tonight or leaves their phone dark until morning. Or think about those exhausting moments during the day when you feel a heavy guilt for simply wanting to rest. You look at colleagues who seem to work through lunch without breaking a sweat, or social media posts showing people achieving endless goals, and a sharp inner voice whispers that you are lagging far behind in life. You put on a cheerful, energetic smile to manage their perception, nodding along while feeling completely hollow inside, terrified that showing any fatigue will make you look inadequate or lazy. When those waves of comparison threaten to pull you off your feet, you can choose to stop treating your physical limits as a personal defect. You do not need to sweep away every fallen leaf in the city to earn your place on the earth. You can let others hold whatever opinions they choose about your speed, your progress, or your lifestyle, without allowing their casual judgments to dictate your breath. Allowing yourself to feel quiet, tired, and unpolished, even while the world demands a sparkling performance, is not an act of lazy surrender. It is the unshakable sanity of a heavy sandstone block that sits firmly in the earth, unbothered by how fast the dust clouds roll past its base. Notice too how often you punish yourself for needing sleep without having resolved every misunderstanding first. You finish a long, emotionally draining day of holding your life together. Yet the second your head touches the pillow, an inner examiner begins its harsh audit. It asks why you spoke so awkwardly in that meeting, why you could not make that relative like you, or how you can justify sleeping when someone out there holds a negative view of your heart. It treats another person's misunderstanding as a fire you must extinguish before dawn, demanding that you earn your rest by solving their mind in the dark. Yet the ancient sandstone stele standing in the clay courtyard does not ask permission from the wind to hold its place in the quiet air. It stands heavy, dense, and immovable, anchored deep in the earth, unbothered by how much yellow grit the breeze carries over the wall. Rest is not a reward reserved only for those who have convinced every stranger to love them. Rest is the fundamental quiet ground from which all real dignity, clarity, and self-respect bloom. Giving yourself complete permission to lie flat in this dark room tonight, without fixing anyone's perception or rewriting any past conversation, is how you honor the sacred stone of your own life. Living this path in modern life does not require you to become cold or stop caring about the people around you. It shows up in the quietest, simplest boundaries of your day. It is taking one long, steady breath before over-explaining your choices. It is choosing not to replay a single awkward sentence 500 times in your mind before dawn. It is the brave, quiet realization that another person's harsh judgment is merely a gust of wind carrying dry dust from their own internal hills, carrying no intrinsic power to alter the deep carving inside your heart. You do not need to become a perfect, unfeeling monument by tomorrow morning. The Zen path is not about building a heart made of ice that never feels the sting of a cold word. It is simply about dropping that heavy straw broom that you have been swinging at the sky for far too long. It is learning to catch the moment your chest tightens with defensive panic, and gently reminding yourself that you can sit down on the stone step instead of fighting the atmosphere. When you practice offering your presence from a place of unbothered integrity rather than constant image control, your life recovers a quiet, unhurried stability. You can speak your truth clearly when it is needed during the day, offering genuine warmth and honest effort, and then return to your own quiet foundation when night arrives. You step out of the exhausting role of the frantic sweeper, entering the room as a solid, calm presence that holds its shape without needing the wind to bow down before it. As these late hours settle softly around your home right now, allow these simple truths to cool the remaining heat in your heart. You have run after enough floating particles. You have worn your hands raw trying to polish a sky full of dust. The working day, with its endless evaluations, its social performances, and its heavy image defense, has fully retreated into the dark. The night has opened a vast, peaceful shelter around your bed, offering a quiet sanctuary where no opinions need to be corrected, no reputations need to be saved, and no guilt needs to be carried. Feel the easy, natural movement of your chest continuing its silent work in the dark. Cool air fills your ribs, lifting your chest slightly, and flows out with a long, soft fall. You are completely permitted to lay down your straw brooms for the night. You are allowed to let every fear of judgment, every need for approval, and every sharp misunderstanding dissolve into the wide, dark silence beyond your window. The solid sandstone foundation beneath your house is resting, cool and vast, ready to support your entire weight without asking you to rewrite your name. Now let every bronze carving chisel, stiff rice straw broom, and hand-carved stone slab dissolve into the quiet, dark soil of the clay courtyard. The stories of Shin sitting in the red cliff quarry shed and Yori resting near the baked earth wall have completed their quiet, steady work inside your chest. They are no longer words spoken into the dark, but are sinking down like cool, fresh evening mist percolating through layers of fine yellow sand, reaching the unyielding granite bedrock deep within your soul. The heavy iron rasps have been set down upon the wooden bench. The rice straw brooms rest motionless against the wall. The carved inscriptions hold their place in the rock, leaving your hands empty, soft and unburdened in the quiet darkness. Your physical frame is becoming deeply, comfortably heavy against the steady mattress beneath you. Feel the back of your shoulders and your shoulder blades letting go of their last subtle hold, sinking an inch deeper into the soft sheets. Your eyelids feel weighted, smooth, and completely relaxed, as if a gentle spray of cool spring water had washed away every trace of dust and defensive strain from behind your brow. The delicate muscles around your jaw unclamp, letting your throat open into a spacious, cool passage where the night air flows easily, without any need to defend your name or rewrite another person's perception. Every breath you draw now is becoming slower, lighter, and almost silent. A quiet intake of air arrives, lifting your chest like a faint breeze touching dry plum leaves, and then glides out like dust settling softly upon the courtyard floor. Inhale, slow and spacious. Exhale, long, quiet, and uncalculated. You are not measuring the air moving through your ribs. You are simply allowing the natural wisdom of your body to breathe itself, steady, unforced, and completely whole as it is. Imagine a massive sandstone stele resting motionless under a quiet, starry night in the clay-walled courtyard. The cool air glides softly over its face, washing over the deeply etched characters with a long, peaceful cadence. Deep within the earth, the stone's heavy foundation sits in perfect, unbroken stillness, holding its place without asking which way the night wind carries the sand. There are no frantic sweepers swinging brooms in the dark, no anxious carvers polishing stone, and no fleeting judgments capable of altering the deep lines cut into the rock. The sandstone monument stands broad, stable, and unbothered in the dark, holding its deep inscription while the light mountain breeze passes harmlessly through the trees. Inside your own body, that exact same unbothered foundation is quietly opening up. The sharp, tight dread of needing everyone's approval has slipped out of your chest long ago. It has drifted away through the high clay walls, carried off into the night air, where no one can ever demand that you polish your soul for stranger eyes again. You do not need to win any arguments to feel safe tonight. You do not need to prove your goodness by running after every floating particle in the dark. The vast night is wide enough to hold their independent thoughts, and quiet enough to let you rest without defending your heart. Feel the deep heaviness in your thighs and calves, melting into the supportive bed. Feel your ankles and toes resting completely motionless, freed from the long days of standing on dusty quarry floors. There are no reputations to repair in this quiet room, no false impressions to fix before morning, and no external judgment strong enough to pull the solid sandstone foundation out from under your spine. You have returned to the deep, unvarnished integrity from which you were carved. Grant your mind complete permission to lay down its endless image control labors. You do not have to solve the puzzle of how to make everyone understand your heart. You do not need to figure out how to stop the wind from blowing sand before the sun rises. Those tasks belong to the open desert outside, and you are resting far inside the quiet sanctuary now, where defensive panic holds no meaning and reputation control is no longer required. If a stray thought of someone's harsh opinion flickers through the dark, let it be like a single grain of yellow sand drifting past on the night breeze, touching the quiet rock briefly before falling away into the dirt. You do not need to catch the grain in your hand. You do not need to sweep the stone with a straw broom. You can simply watch it float past and vanish into the quiet shadows, leaving your deep sandstone foundation perfectly calm, perfectly grounded, and completely untouched. The night has built a quiet shelter around your bed, protecting your weariness from the shifting winds of the world outside. Tomorrow will arrive in its own time, bringing its own passing currents and its own simple weather. But tonight belongs entirely to stillness. Tonight is a sacred sanctuary where your spirit is permitted to drop its polishing cloths, unclamp its tight jaw, and sink into the restorative depths of uncalculated rest. You are safe here in the unadorned dark. Your heart knows how to beat without a public defense. Your lungs know how to draw air without a dust storm in your throat. Your soul knows how to rest when the mind finally leaves the broom against the clay wall and allows the stone carver to sleep on the quiet earth. Let yourself sink down through the soft, dark layers of sleep, dropping into the deep, quiet bedrock where no opinion can reach, where no defense is demanded, and where your true spirit rests forever solid, whole, and profoundly at peace. When the dry mountain wind blows softly across the ancient courtyard in the dark, what can a stone ever lose by letting the sand float past its face? 3 YouTube title options. The quiet courtyard continues to cradle your physical frame in absolute stillness, held by the broad earth that asks nothing of your weary heart tonight. Outside under the dark desert sky, the soft night wind glides over the high clay walls with a steady, peaceful cadence, brushing past the sandstone steels without requiring that any carved character defend its form before dawn. The heavy base of the stone monument rests in its own cool, unmoving nature, untouched by the fine sand that drifted across the courtyard earlier in the evening. It does not strain to clean its face, nor does it weep over the words spoken by travelers who walked past the gate. It simply exists in its deep, unshakable foundation, solid, grounded, and entirely complete in this present moment. When you allow your mind to step back from the exhausting compulsion to manage what others think, you touch an ancient, untroubled sanctuary that has been waiting beneath your defensive anxiety all along. The world around you may constantly insist that your value is measured only by the applause and approval of those you meet. But here in the quiet darkness of your room, those frantic demands carry no weight. You are not required to rewrite anyone's perception of your character to earn the right to rest tonight. Your fundamental capacity to live with dignity and offer an honest heart tomorrow is already whole, held in the quiet, unforced rhythm of your breath, your beating heart, and the firm bed supporting your frame right now. Think of how much vital life force has been burned by treating other people's shifting opinions as a storm you were forced to stop with your bare hands. Their fleeting moods, their personal biases, their hasty judgments, these are merely the natural shifting currents of an open sky, moving through human minds like dry dust carried over a clay wall. They do not define your core value as a human being, nor do they possess the power to alter the deep carving inside your heart unless you drop your tools and spend your life chasing after the wind. When you choose to let the sand remain sand and the sky remain sky, the tight, burning knot sitting in your throat quietly begins to soften, leaving behind a broad, spacious ease that fills your chest with cool air. Let your physical body yield even more deeply to the steady mattress supporting your weight. Feel the deep, heavy warmth spreading down through your upper back, loosening your shoulders, and relaxing your jaw, hips, and legs all the way into your feet. Your hands feel soft and completely unburdened, resting lightly upon the sheets like unused bronze chisels, resting on a workbench after the day's labor is done. There are no reputations you must defend tonight, no arguments you need to win in your head, and no false perception you must correct before the sun rises. In the timeless wisdom of Zen reflection, true inner freedom is found not in building an iron wall that keeps every opinion away, but in realizing that your true self is like a deeply carved sandstone monument. When you drop the desperate need for universal approval, you return to this simple, sacred landing. You realize that your life was never meant to be a fragile drawing in dry chalk that can be erased by a single cold remark, but a solid, enduring stone that holds its true form through every passing breeze. Picture the clay-walled courtyard stretching out beneath the vast, quiet canopy of the midnight sky. The cool desert air drifts softly over the ancient monuments, touching the dark stone, the dry straw, and the earth floor with an unhurried, peaceful rhythm. Beside the quiet steps, the wide rice straw broom rests motionless against the wall, its work finished, completely unbothered by the few grains of sand resting on the stone face. Everything in the sanctuary sits together in quiet harmony, resting in the dark without needing to alter the atmosphere or conquer the wind. Allow your awareness to sink completely into that silent, spacious sanctuary. Feel your breathing grow lighter, slower, and completely effortless, flowing in and out like a faint night breeze passing through a clay shutter. Your physical body is heavy, quiet, and fully held by the broad earth beneath your house, dropping deeper and deeper into the quiet, restorative dark. You are given full permission to let go of the entire world now. You are permitted to stop defending your name, to stop managing external minds, and to let your whole being settle into deep, undisturbed rest. The night encloses your room in absolute stillness, shielding your weariness from every judgment and every sharp word outside. The morning will arrive in its own time, bringing its own light and its own shifting weather. But right now there is only this soft bed, this cool air, and the deep abiding peace of a Carver who has finally returned home to the unbothered rock. Sinking down now, softly and effortlessly through the quiet shadows of sleep, floating down into the deep, dark bedrock where no opinion can reach, where no defense is demanded, and where your true spirit rests forever solid, grounded, and profoundly at peace.